So this is a question about right speech. This person asks, well, I want to speak truthfully and with kindness, but in difficult conversations, I either speak too harshly or remain silent out of fear of conflict. Maybe I'm just overthinking this, but how can I skillfully apply right speech in such moments?
Well, by skillfully applying right actions beforehand with your body. So, is your mind restrained and tamed, contained, able to endure things on the right level without acting out? Then the field of development of your speech can become more apparent. Now it's just you just want to deal with the speech because that's the acute issue, but failing to understand that the sole reason you're swayed as much in these experiences is because the mind is not tamed enough, not contained enough. So you can't be purifying your speech if your actions are not purified, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Because when speaking to others in a difficult situation, that's pretty intense, isn't it? So,
yeah, and you are unable to contain that intensity without spilling out through your mouth.
Yeah.
And the reason you're unable to contain intensity is because you haven't trained in containing intensities. Intensities of restraint and precept. That's the whole point of containing a physical behavior, is to be able to remain unmoved in face of a pressuring mind that exerts intensity on you to do, to act, to say, to think.
So then a sign of progress would be a person who is able to endure harsh speech.
Exactly. Not like a person who doesn't feel the intensity.
Yeah.
You still feel it.
Feels the intensity, but
it does not make you say things.
Harsh things,
yeah.
You're still kind. You can say kind things or appropriate.
Yeah.
In the right.
Either way, or even if you don't say anything, at least you won't be saying anything out of that intensity, out of that pressure.
And there's really no bypass, because you can learn skillful ways of speaking in difficult situations. Yeah. Non-violent communication and so on.
Yeah, but all that is just to manage the fact that you still have to do something on account of that intensity.
Yeah. You're already freaking out, and now you have to manage it.
You need to manage it, yeah. But that's why often in the suttas, like it would be listed there, like high up in the training of the monks. It's like he dwells, restrained by the virtue, sense restraint, moderated. He endures the harsh words. He bears them, basically. Not even endures on the right level, When we talk about it, it's kind of slightly different. No, he bears them. He bears the harsh words. He bears the elements. So it doesn't even matter whether you're aware of the right level and what the practice is and this or that. Bearing it is already a development of elements and harsh words.
No retorting, speaking back.
Just plain bearing. If you're able to plainly bear discomfort, you'll be able to endure things on the right level. Then the domain of the middle way, where things endure on their own, where the discernment happens, where the nimittas are discerned, all of that can become apparent. But if you can't even bear elements and words of others, means you still have work to do before you can endure things on the right level. Because often people think it's the same. Enduring things on the right level is the same, just as mindless bearing. It's not.
It's a bit deeper than...
it's the middle way. Yeah. Patient endurance, Kanti, enduring things on the right level as Kanti, it's exactly where the middle way is. It's where you recognize things arising on their own. You see the extent of the intensity and the pressure they exert, your mind exerts on you, and you're unmoved by it. So you're enduring it, as in enduring the lack of the tameness in this animal in that particular instance. But you're seeing the full extent of it. So it's on the right level of your correct, right perspective. But for that, you need to work your way up. And when you fall from that, when you lose that perspective, you lose that right level, well, you fall back on being able to bear the intensity of the animal without compromising your situation further through your actions. So it's a fail-safe. And then when the animal calms down somewhat, you regain the perspective. So that's how even when you fail to endure things on the right level, you're still held up by virtue, by the aggregate of virtue, by being able to bear discomfort elements without disintegrating. But obviously, without discerning and understanding the nature of contact, pasa, pressure, intensity, whatever way you want to translate it, bearing like restraint and virtue and stuff will never automatically or mechanically or magically take you to the level of enduring things on the right level in terms of having perspective and not too much, not too little. No, for that you need to discern. But obviously there will be no discernment taking place if you're not even able to practice basic bearing of the mental pressure that precepts put on you, elements, words of others, i.e. bearing, not acting out. So there's obviously some overlap in that development. It's not like black and white bearing becomes enduring, but it's not the same thing.
So that actually leads me to another question. So before his awakening, the Bodhisattva practiced extreme asceticism and later said it was futile. The Buddha later said that was futile. Yet it seems to me like it was necessary in some way for him to go through that. Like it did benefit him in some way. Could he have realized the Dhamma without those years of kind of hardship,
Well, it was necessary for him in a sense that he had to go through trial and error in order to arrive at that which was left, that middle way. That's why it was necessary. Was it necessary in terms of specifically doing that? No, absolutely not. That was not necessary. So having, through trial and error, arrived at neither too much nor too little, he then taught that as the way to enlightenment to those now who can practice on account of his teaching. So basically, it was necessary for him because he was the first to work his way towards enlightenment just by himself internally. And that's why he was Sammasambuddha, self-enlightened Buddha. Subsequently, everybody else cannot be that. So, with the right instruction that he conveyed, then doing those things, it's completely unnecessary. However, where the line of asceticism is, that's not something that's just like universally true for everybody. That depends on a person. That's why if you know what the middle way is, if you know where the enduring things on the right level is, that's your tune, so to speak. That's the melody. That's the harmony you want to be protecting and cultivating. Sometimes increasing asceticism, what can be perceived as asceticism externally, can contribute to maintenance of that middle way, of that right level. Sometimes increasing ascetic practices can actually be detrimental to it. So that's why when Devadatta was requesting from the Buddha to make these ascetic dhutangas mandatory for everybody because they're factually inspiring to people, make everybody want to practice, like for future generations, he said no. Let those who want to do it, and those who don't want to do it, not do it. In other words, let those who know that it's beneficial for their endurance on the right level, for their middle way, let them do it, and let those who know that it's unbeneficial not do it. Because doing it blindly will take you away from the right melody, from the right tune.
You're just saying, well, I'll put up with hardships and that will give me that.
Yeah, and that's what I say, why?
It'll help me to bear.
Or I won't put up with hardship. Why?
Yeah, well.
The decision, whether you do it or not, should be coming from the recognition of where the practice is, where the right endurance is. If it's maintaining it, clarifying it, do it. If it's obscuring it, taking you away from it, then don't do it.
Yes, that some people require a certain amount of stress to keep things in perspective. Actually,
Exactly. Yeah.
Rather than,
Some people require none, but
Yeah.
you can't just pre-decide that for yourself.
how much is
And even as the Buddha himself, before as a bodhisattva, he went through all these things, and when he pretty much ran out of options, he tried everything. There's nothing that he hasn't tried. So that was necessary for him to then revisit and remember his jhana experience before he left the household life. Like, he would not have even considered it if there were still things that were left for him that he hasn't tried towards enlightenment. And by the way, since we are at that talking about it, I think like the common notion is, oh, he experienced jhana as a child or something, but it's completely unsupported by the suttas. I think they came with like Jatakas and later commentaries, I don't know exactly where, the whole idea of he was a young boy under the tree entering jhana kind of just spontaneously. It was like
innocence of a child.
Yeah, kind of. So basically kind of, and I think it came, well, almost certainly came from the commentaries, but I think it became almost like a pivotal point for the modern views of the special experiences in meditation in jhana, because look, it happened to the Buddha randomly as a child without restraint, without understanding sensuality and stuff. And no sutta ever says that. He says he remembers under an apple tree before in his life that he experienced this, and thought, how about I pursue that and see where it takes me?
Yeah.
And there is no mention that he was a child. And then there was the was it Agama or some Tibetan parallels to that? I think it might have been some other Tibetan or Chinese parallel to that. One of the suttas that mention that, and it elaborates on that whole story, whereby not just that he wasn't a child, it was shortly before him leaving the household life, after basically he already seen a sick man, old man, and a dead man. So his mind already fully experienced this passion, because there's actually a sutta in Pali Nikaya where it says that while he was still a bodhisattva, before he left his home, after encountering the sick, aging and dead man, the intoxication with life, sensuality, youth left him. Even before he went out and became a renunciate to seek enlightenment.
Right. Yeah.
So this Chinese parallel elaborates actually on that story, whereby his father has already had suspicions that he wants to leave the kingdom and become a renunciate, wandering ascetic. So he sent him to this village that was under their kind of how do you call it? Rulership. Basically to incite him to rule, because that it's going to be his. All of the people there are his subjects of his kingdom, and he should go and attend to the work they were doing and just basically get him re-involved. So he went there, and then he saw all these kind of slaves and people just suffering, working hard in a very rough conditions. And he says, who do you belong to? Like, who is like? He says, we belong to you, sir. Like, we work for your kingdom. We are yours. And then he says, okay, well, from this day onwards, you're free man, just leave. And he was so shocked to see the harshness of your average person's life. He dismissed them and went under a tree, under a rose apple tree or whatever it's translated.
Dispassionate. Yeah.
Completely dispassionate, even more turned away from the life. And that's where he entered jhana. So that's what he remembered after trying all these extremely amplified practices of asceticism and this and that he realized, hold on, I remember that experience when actually there was no hindrances, the right level was there, the perfect tune was just ongoing, and it was on the basis of complete dispassion and disenchantment. There was nothing tying him to the world. How about I pursue that further? And then he realized that's the way to enlightenment. Because up until that point, see, all the ascetic practices they require passion. And he didn't question that, because he thought those practices are valid in and of themselves and they'll do the work for him. But there is no way you will be committing to the extreme levels of self-mortification without that hard center of passion driving you. You need it. But he remembered the experience when his mind was completely passionless, completely disenchanted, turned away, not leaning onto anything. And there was the experience of jhana. So that's something like, although it's some like a, as I said, Tibetan or a Chinese parallel, it ties in with that other actual sutta where he did say that these intoxications left him even before he left the home. So he was already free from sensuality, basically. He said since he left the home, he hasn't had a sensual thought, even way before he became the Buddha. So just to kind of re-illustrate that point, so people don't think these things happen magically because some later commentary there thought, oh, he must have been a kid or something.
You just didn't understand what had happened. Or you didn't
well, he didn't understand the full extent of it. And as I said, like, he obviously thought that the ascetic practices, this amplified drive, force, and committing to the practices is more of that dispassion that he was doing under the apple tree. But when he realized that it isn't,
it's just the opposite.
Yeah, he thought, oh, that was too much. See, sensuality, connection to the world, concern with the world, abandon all of that, you reach the middle level of dispassion in regard to both directions. But then he thought, abandoning the world is good, so how about I go even further and start forcing this so I get to that enlightenment? And came to the brink of death and realized, hold on, actually, no, now there's passion again. So let me go back, retrace my step until there is no passion and stop there. And there was the first jhana, there was the rose apple tree experience, there was enduring things on the right level. And now you stick to that. And that's then what he thought, what he was teaching afterwards for the rest of his life. How to get to that through the Noble Eightfold Path and stay there and protect it and cultivate it until your work is done.